Hey folks, welcome back to Snowpal Polyglot Software Development Podcast. Our guest today is Ramya Ganesh. Ramya, happy to see you back on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, and so glad to be back here again. Great.
Yeah, no, I know we have a bit of a time crunch, so I'm just going to get right in. But before we do that, in the event that people haven't watched or listened to the previous one just as yet, if you could give a quick, brief intro about yourself, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So I work in Cisco. I've been working in cybersecurity, AWS cloud for the past 10 years. I've been exploring AI in AWS for the past 1 year. I've done a couple of hackathon projects using AWS and AI. So that's where exploring Bedrock and SageMaker and everything started. And I really have been liking the way AWS is being used to spin up applications. It's I think it's pretty good. So today I'm here to talk about SageMaker and Bedrock. And I've been exploring a little bit of agents too. Maybe I can just talk about touch upon agents as well
Okay,
if
cool.
you have time, a little bit. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm going to need a lot more time, to be honest, from you to go through all of these items. We can do that, as you have more time. But I'm glad that we kicked this off, right? The first of our tech podcast. I know there was a bit of scheduling. We try to get this to go, and I'm happy that it's happening more than anything else. So much appreciate you sort of squeezing this in your busy week. I know you have to go, drop off your daughter in like 45 minutes. I want to stick to that. And Ramya, if you are able to pop in after sort of you're waiting in the car, feel free to jump back into the podcast. Most likely I'll still be here trying
Okay.
to figure some of these things out. Okay, and folks, by way of quick introduction to my ignorance about Bedrock, if you remember a little while ago, let me do a quick screen share here just so. Okay. Yeah, this is the screen share. And I think if I go really quickly, it was maybe about a month ago. Uh, Yep, the AI Explorer series, as I called it, one, two, and three. I think it's about 3 hours long. Folks haven't watched it, and you have nothing better to do, and you have 3 hours. You may want to check that out. It's me walking through every AWS AI product with me having absolutely no idea about any of them. So I did not even know the names of those products and services before I hit record. So the whole idea behind those 3 hours was me as an ignorant AWS AI developer trying to figure out, just navigate, maneuver, and see what's out there, right? And then make a lot of speculations and assumptions about each of those products. So that it's in itself took like 3 hours, and I think I spent like 5-7 minutes per product just trying to read and figuring out what it possibly might be. Only as we dig deeper into it, I'll know how far off I may have been from the reality of what the product offering was. So this is a continuation to that. So it's one, two, and three, and I think this list has a bunch of those. And in number three, it says Bedrock is a foundational AI product, and I probably spent 5 minutes on it, literally, right? So let's jump right in. I'm going to do. If you start, let me pull this to a different window. I'm going to pull this to a different window so I can share something else. Okay, perfect. So Ramya, the first question, right? As somebody who's not used this before.
Yeah.
Uh, There are a number of different AWS AI products, and let me make sure you can see all of my. Okay. AWS products. If I go to AI, okay, there are a number of things here. Oh, wait, hang on. Where did that go? I'll go to that page. Okay, I'm just going to stay here. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so this is a list of products, and like I said in my first series of 3 quick podcasts, I just went through the list to see what it was, and trying to understand the difference. AWS has, just like every other hyperscaler, they have a large catalog of every product. And a lot of times they have redundant products when it comes to like databases or anything that you want to do. I've seen that you have 7 different options. Some AWS may have created themselves, others
Mm-hmm.
they probably acquired one way or the other. But there's more than one option, and then one of the initial challenges is to figure out which one should I go with, right? Even after you sort of have an idea. With
Yeah.
that as a context, let's kick this off here, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is Bedrock at a very high level? And how is it different? And yeah, I'll tell you what my understanding was, and it's from a month and a half ago and could be very wrong to begin with. As I went through each of these products, I realized that some of them were sort of vertical offerings. They had a specific purpose. Like there were some AWS AI products for the healthcare industry and some for some other industries specifically, right? Whereas Bedrock seemed like one of the other ones, like SageMaker, which I believe is now called SageMaker AI after the rebranding.
Right.
Some of those came across as a bit more generic. They were foundational, horizontal types of products, if you will. I mean,
Mhm.
is that right to begin with? And
Yeah.
as part of the question is, what is Bedrock and when might one want to use Amazon Bedrock?
Yeah. So Amazon Bedrock is something actually fairly new. Like SageMaker has been there for quite some time. It's been there since 2017, since its inception. But Bedrock was there in the market at 2022. So it's very fairly new. But the key difference between SageMaker and Bedrock. So what is actually Bedrock? Bedrock is when so you have it's kind of like a say if when you log into Amazon Prime, and if you want to watch some movies, you have a catalog of movies. So similarly, Bedrock has a catalog of models. It has like hundreds of models and different LLMs which are yeah offered by Anthropic. Amazon actually has its own LLM which is called Titan. So it offers loads of like LMs foundation models that you can see. So and this one is like if you have, it's very easy to integrate a model with your other applications that are running in cloud, and because it uses a very flexible API. So so if you see like if there is a certain use case that you are trying to address, and you would see here you will go to the catalog and you will see like what each of these models are used for. So there's a basic research that is required where
Hey,
see if
Ramya,
there.
sorry, I'm going to interrupt as we go. Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, that way, I want to learn as much from in the next 40 minutes, right? As anybody else watching this as well. So
Mm-hmm.
again, like I told you, I've not built anything with Ada Amazon Bedrock, right? So I'm a beginner from it when it comes to a consuming Amazon Bedrock standpoint. So my
Mm-hmm.
first question is, what are some of the use cases? In other words, from my very high level read of it, and you mentioned the catalog, Prime
Mm-hmm.
Video as an example as well.
Mm-hmm.
Text generation, image generation, and those types of things are potential solutions. But outside of that, one of the things I want to look at was just to step back is, okay, what does it mean to create a full stack web app using Bedrock? I didn't even know if it was possible. I
Mm-hmm.
just Googled this before I hopped on this call here, and I stumbled into it, and I figured I'll keep this open and probably it'll guide our conversation, right? So in other words, as somebody, running our startup, I'll ask you, it's not a manufactured question. It's just a real question. So I may or may not have socialized some of what we do, but let's say we have a mobile app, we have a web app, we have APIs, and we have a bunch of different things. I want to see that as a company that's been doing this, but without using, say, Bedrock, what how could we potentially integrate Bedrock? Where like a simple example is a web application that we have, which is a project management platform, right? We have a mobile app, which is essentially a project management platform with a mobile interface to the same set of functionality. We have a rich set of backend APIs built in a number of different languages. They're deployed on AWS, on the API gateway, and they're deployed on AWS Marketplace. People can subscribe to it and consume and start building their applications however they want to be able to build it. This is just a quick background of what we do. And the answer could be, Krish, it's not related to any of that, which is totally fine too. I just
Mm-hmm.
want to know, as somebody who's not used it,
Mm-hmm.
where would this kind of fit in this equation of what I've mentioned here?
Yeah, so I can talk about how what the application that I have built, Krish, and maybe you can fit
Sure.
here because you have like other integrations in place, right? So for the application that I used with Bedrock was it was like code generation. So basically, say for example, you have code in different repositories, and the use case was pulling the code from different repositories, different files, different PDFs, and converting them to an architectural diagram. So that was what the use case was.
Oh, say that again. Sorry, Ramya. Can you repeat the use case one more time?
Yeah, so it was like say for example you're a developer and you're new to the team and you have no idea about the code base. So there's tons of code base that you will have to see. You'll have to check different PDF files and everything. So this application would basically pull the code from different repositories. It will pull, if you have like Kubernetes files and different PDFs, so it will pull all the documents, and it will basically convert that to an architectural diagram. Basically, it will tell the user like what the flow is. Like you
Okay,
have
that's
X
okay.
number of
That's a okay,
microservices.
lovely, right? So I have questions there then. Perfect. So say
Mhm.
at Snowpal, we have a number of different repos on GitHub, and now those repos span across different languages and different frameworks within the same language as well. So let's take just two. We are a polyglot shop, but let's just take two. We
Okay.
have a number of Ruby repositories, and we
Mm,
have a number of repositories built on Golang. Now,
right.
what you're saying is a new developer joins a team or a product manager, doesn't matter, and they
Mhm.
sort of want to get a feel for the environment, if you will, right? Just trying to understand
Yes.
what this company does. It's
Hmm.
almost like analogous to looking at your tickets, right? Like when we pick up a new project, even if nobody told us anything, if you just go look up all the open tickets, right, issues that are open in whatever bug tracking software that you use, it gives you a good sense of what the team is doing, where their problems are, what features might be, where there might be bugs, and so on and so forth. In this case here, you're saying, let's take, you said multiple repositories, but let's take one repository. Or does this use case only make sense for multiple repos, or does it also make sense for a single repo?
It makes sense with different repos, multiple repos, or if you have a single repo, that's fine too, but it will apply to multiple repos as well.
Okay, but let's take a single repo, right? Let's say I have like one of our APIs is built in Golang, for instance. It's got Golang files, it's got some README and whatnot. Now I have this repo.
Hmm.
What you mentioned the architecture diagram. So let's say in this use case, a new developer joins a team. Is the idea here to have them get more acclimated to the code base in the repository?
Right. So you have like hundreds of files there, right, in the repo. So it is very difficult to for the developer to understand. Okay, so this is how what the flow is, and this is what the code looks like. So if imagine if the whole code base can be converted to architectural diagram where he gets a better understanding of how this microservice is like, this is how the code is written in this microservice, that's how the code is written that one, and how it interacts with the different microservices in Kubernetes, AWS, and all. So that's what it is about. So you have different LLMs which actually does code summarization. So this actually enhances a little bit where it does code summarization, also pulls it from the repo, and also will convert it into a diagram. Basically, just make it will have the whole flow from start to end to see like, okay, how the various components connect to
I
each
think
other.
that's a good use case, right? That's good. That's a good starting point.
Mhm.
Now, once we figure that that is what we want to be able to do, sort of generate a diagram of a single repo. Let's keep it small, right? Let's say one repo, and I want to create a visual representation, an illustration of the code.
Mhm.
Before we go through what it entails and we end up going through the process, I want to kind of understand the end result. You know what I mean? Just so that way I know what to imagine. So the end result, if we were not using Bedrock to do this, let's say if a human were to do it, what would the end result be? You mentioned an architecture diagram, so it could be an application architecture, could be a database architecture, could be security architecture. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So it's a
Right.
diagram, it's a bunch of boxes, circles, and if you're a developer like me who doesn't draw well but likes to see visually, every diagram has only like three or four different shapes, right? I have only squares, rhombus, rectangle, and a circle because I don't. My creativity sort of stops there.
Everything actually gets a better understanding with diagrams than just looking at a code, right? Which is actually the all textual base. So
Absolutely right. Totally. So picture is certainly worth 1,000 words, right? So when we create this, let's say we took a single repo in your example, the use case that you had mentioned.
mhm.
What did that diagram end up looking that? I mean, it's a very high level abstract question. How detailed was that diagram? In other words, was it along the lines of what a human would have generated? Like, I'm just trying to see, well, maybe we can pull up an example here. I want to kind of imagine what the complexity or the magnitude of the diagram was. How specific was the diagram?
So for our use case, because it was a hackathon, it was done in like like a 24 hours, right? So this was prompt engineered. Okay, so basically we took like a single repo use case, and it was prompt engineered such that you have the input files already pulled from a specific repo, and it actually will produce a smaller diagram, which is actually it will just show the entire flow. So just imagine, like in a repo, you have like two, three files. You have Git, you have your Golang code, two, three files, and then it will just generate a diagram, which will show like, okay, this is what the code base is. This is what the components. This is how the various functions or modules are linked to each other. So
Okay.
that's how the diagram gets generated at the end. And this was prompt engineered because fine tuning a model would actually be a little bit, but since we are already since we are using a repo, which is like, more like an in-house repo, we have to create a RAG and a vector database for it.
Okay.
But it was really easy to integrate everything in AWS because AWS it's much faster because to integrate them in AWS because we use a Hugging Face function for the RAG and vector DB. And for Bedrock, there was already lots of LLMs, which actually does the code summarization and all. But it's the research that took a longer time because if you see, like even in Hugging Face, if you see, like there are so many models out there.
Yeah, it's funny you
And,
should mention Hugging Face. I actually seen it one time, and I want to sort of let me pause you there, right? So, just to from what you've said so far, this is the use case. We have
yeah.
a repository,
Mhm.
one or multiple repos, doesn't matter. We want to be able to generate a diagrammatic, a visual illustration of this. That's our requirement. That's all we aim to do here. Now, let's go just at the high level. Let's see what this entails. I think that's small enough a use case to sort of digest the problem. So
Okay.
we go to Bedrock is able to do, but just one question before I
Mhm.
go there, which is so the repository has, you mentioned PDFs, like different kinds of files, right? It has actual source code, it has configuration files, it has PDFs, and maybe we have diagrams or a number of different kinds of assets
Yeah.
that the repo comprises of. The idea is for this Bedrock, this exercise to go across that, right? Not just text, not just visual, not just images, go
Mhm.
across all of them and essentially come up with a diagram that is also sort of that inspected the images that were in the repository too, correct? It's not
Right.
just the text, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Perfect. Now, first question is
Mhm.
not first, one of the fifth or seventh question, whatever it is I've seen some other AWS AI products that actually have to do specifically with image generation or image analysis and text analysis. I don't remember the names, but there is that list there that has a number of them. But when we say we are using Bedrock, does it mean are we just using Amazon Bedrock and that is it? Or would we actually be in your exercise? Did you use Bedrock alongside a number of other AWS AI products to actually get what you needed done? That's my basic first.
Yeah, so it's basically S3 where you would store, it's everything is like AWS related. So it would be S3 where you would store your documents, your repos, you would pull the repos from there. And that's pretty much it. And then Hugging Face integration with AWS. So everything was actually inside the AWS.
Okay, but no, but what I'm asking is,
Hmm.
which means, forgetting S3 for a second, if I go to this list here, yeah, I thought I was on that. Is this, maybe this is the list? Looking for that. Let me go back there.
So are you talking about
Yeah, I just want to know that, in this list here, and
Okay.
I ran into some that were
Mhm.
specifically text or image related. My question was, did you use any other AI product in this list alongside Bedrock, or was Bedrock the only thing that you had used in your exercise here?
Just the Bedrock, and Bedrock is like so powerful. Like we just use the Bedrock, but nothing, not like the Amazon Q or whatever. But it was just mainly S3.
But that's outside this list here, right? So which is where, okay,
Mhm.
I think I answered my question. But the reason I asked that is one
Okay.
of the challenges that almost everybody has when you're
Hmm.
picking up something from a catalog. I mentioned, right? Like I mentioned the example of database. When you want to use an AWS database, do you use document DB? Do you use DynamoDB? Do you use one of the other things? Because there's like seven different variations that are all similar in some ways and different in other ways. So
Right.
navigating the catalog for
Hmm.
picking and choosing what you want to use is one of those first items. So if I wanted to do what you just mentioned, generate a diagram from a piece of code, a repository,
Hmm.
is Bedrock the only option? Or are there other AWS AI products that I could possibly be using that's not Bedrock?
So you could also use SageMaker. But SageMaker is like a total ecosystem, right? Where you would be like building models, and you can, deploy models and everything. But for in this use case where you have already LLMs in place that are very good with code generation, anything to do with code, right? Code summarization and all. So in that case, this specific use case, Bedrock would be more easier to use than using
Okay.
SageMaker.
Okay, cool. And maybe if I remember before our session ends, I'll come up. I thought I'd seen some other image generation AI product here,
Mhm.
and that's the one I'm thinking about. I just don't know which one it is, but that's all right. So we go to Bedrock, and
But
this is our use case. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but AWS does offer lots of services, like functions that would convert like text to image, image to text. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but those are called Amazon Lex.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, see, yeah, exactly, and then there's a text
yes,
tract here that says extract text and data from documents, which means
extract. Yeah,
so
yeah,
one more time, the same challenge does exist, right? I don't know what the history behind text tract and say Bedrock is. Uh,
yes. So
is
text
it
wrap is basically a function that would convert, right? It's like text to text, but if you have like a document, right, or that would convert to speech. Like I think Lex converts text to speech, and there is something called Poly that would convert, text to image. So AWS does have a lot of functions which does that.
okay? So in other words, we could either go with Bedrock or we could pick one or the other. The same challenge still does exist here, right? So for the use case that we're talking about here, clearly what I'm understanding is Bedrock is one way to go about from an AWS catalog standpoint, but certainly not the only way to do this, right?
But that is for if you're gonna use a model or deploy a model. Obviously, we'll need a model for this for sure, right? For this use
Right?
case, we will definitely need a model. So we will be using Bedrock. For example, let's say in this use case, right, where you are generating text from image, from text you're generating an image, basically code to a diagram, right? So now I have chosen a model, and which can get the code from the repos, and the model is deployed. I'm able to infer the model. I'm prompt engineering it, so I'm putting a prompt, and it's giving me in a text form. But the next challenge for me is how do I convert this text to image? That's where I will use the AWS function, which is the Lex. So I would integrate Lex into the output of this model. So it converts whatever text it gives to an image, if
So
that
which
makes sense.
means, just to be clear, even when you're using Bedrock, let me go pick up his Lex in this list here.
Yeah, so if
He-
you search for Lex in the search, I think you should be able to pop it.
Is it Lex like
Yeah,
LEX?
LEX.
Okay, so when you in our use case,
Mhm.
you when you built it, you used Bedrock and Amazon Lex specifically. Like you intentionally use that, or was it kind of behind the scenes that Bedrock was leveraging Lex or something like that?
Yeah, so for this use case, we kind of stopped at a point where we got the from the repo, we got an output from the model, but the next step was to integrate AWS function which converts the text to an image. Basically, you can also do it in ChatGPT as well. So if you ChatGPT, if you just put a
No, no,
output.
forget ChatGPT. Would Bedrock let me do that without using Lex, or did you have to use Lex to accomplish that?
We had to use a function, a different function, which will actually convert the output to an image.
Okay, cool. I think I'll probably get. I think
You,
I have. Sorry,
there are models which will allow you to do it, which will convert. There are many models actually which converts text to image. But remember that those models will have a lot of GPU consumption. Okay,
right.
so the resource utilization for those would be really high because it is processing an image. So that is also something that needs to be considered. So if you're just doing a home project and you'll not be able to spin a model that is like a extra large GPU, right?
Right,
Because of the price constraint.
right.
So in that case, I think it's better to go with a model that will do like just a text generation and just use a function to convert the text into an image.
Okay, makes sense. But the thing I'm also trying to understand here is, tell me if my understanding here is fair, more or less accurate. If I wanted to be specific about which, like if I go to Amazon Bedrock, one of the first things I see is a model catalog that you mentioned as well. But if I were to be not very specific about the models that I was interested in, if I went to something like, say, Amazon Text Track, my, again, reading this for 2 minutes, I'm assuming, and tell me how much of this assumption is correct and how much is way off, that this is also using some LLM, but perhaps I'm not able to pick and choose which model to use when I'm going with TextTrack, because TextTrack is implemented with certain models perhaps behind the scenes. Whereas when I use Bedrock, I'm able to sort of handpick which LLM I want to start off with. Is
Right,
that
right.
correct or wrong to begin with?
It is correct. So in Bedrock, when you are in Bedrock, you will be like, you will have, there is a research that is needed to choose, to pick the correct model for your specific use case. Because even if you see, like, there are a lot of models that Bedrock offers, which is the Claude Sonnet. Most of the Claude Sonnets will do code processing, code summarization.
Okay, so I think you kind of answered my question. So what we are saying here then, Ramya, is if
Mhm.
I want to say extract, I don't know, text from any document, seems like I mean, when we do this hands-on, when we get to that point, we could probably compare and contrast as well. You could use TextRack, which means it probably is going to be a much faster exercise, meaning it probably has some fundamental assumptions and it uses some models, and it is going to probably not ask you a whole lot of questions. Whereas when you're going with something like Bedrock, then you're doing a lot yourself, meaning you're first figuring out which model should I be using, as opposed to using some other AWS product where the model is perhaps embedded or transparent to me as a developer. I mean, is
Yeah.
that correct?
Correct. But just want to add something for more clarification. So all the ones that we just talked about, the text track, Lex, and everything, it's kind of a function that AWS offers that you could use to process your model outputs. So if there is any output that like you
But
have
when you say
model,
function, it's not function as I'm thinking of a Lambda function, right? That's different. This is still its own product, right? So just
yeah,
want to make sure when you say function, what do you mean exactly in the context of, if I think AWS Lambda, it's a function
yeah,
in that sense. So
yeah.
what do you mean when you say this is also a function?
It's okay, same like Lambda. So it is a service that AWS offers that will actually create, like, if you have a use case where you have to convert like text to speech or speech to image or anything like that. There's also contact center. There's also different functions that not functions, I would say, models that AWS offers that will actually create a contact center for you actually. So right, so it will ask questions, it will like all the fine-tuned models for contact center. So all these are actually services that the AWS offers. So yes, so you can either use those services or you could come to this model and you can either fine-tune the existing models or prompt engineer it.
Okay, perfect. Right. Okay. We can chug along here. Sorry, that took a little while. I just want to digest the first question, which is, hey, should I be picking this? Why should I pick this? If because a lot of times, if you're a startup, at least in my experience, the idea is you try to do a prototype as quickly as possible, and then you see whether it makes sense or not. But as it turns out, in reality, if you get something working in a prototype and you've made enough progress, I've hardly ever seen the case where you've gone back and analyze something else and try to do and compare and contrast, because you just don't have the time and money. So if you did a decent enough prototype with the first product, 9 or 10 times we've seen that is what ends up going to production. So it's less to say that this is a tool we use for prototyping versus, what, if you did a decent enough job, that
Mhm.
is literally going to show up in production. So you better spend those initial hours and minutes sensibly, which is kind of why, before I spend the first 3 hours on anything, whether it's AWS or outside of it, personally speaking, I I want to make sure that it's worthwhile, if not for any other reason, because sometimes you get it working as an engineer and then you don't have the heart to go back or the time or the money. And you're like, you know what? If DocumentDB does what I wanted for it to do, even if it's not perfect, I'm going to just go with it, right? You just end up going with it because it's a prototype and then move on, right? I think you've answered those questions.
Yeah. And
So,
AWS does offer, I don't know if you have heard of Party Rock. Have you heard of Party Rock?
no.
AWS. So that is a very cool app actually that AWS offers. And if you can actually put it in a browser, it's called Party Rock. I think it's
Oh,
partyrock.aws.
this one here.
Yeah, it's a very cool application. Like you can just build an AI application just in like few minutes. I just explored that and I could just build an application in 10 minutes. So
Wow, what is this?
and it is also all open source, like you can just create applications and you can just put in there. So it's a list of, like you can just, it's basically works as a prompt. So you would give a prompt there. Say for example, you want to you're in mood for a South Indian food, in an area like 10 minutes around, and you want to get the best, the restaurants, the top three restaurants based on ratings. And you can just put that as a prompt to this application, and it will create an application for you. So each time you run that application, it will generate the output based on your prompt.
So hang on, this is interesting. I had no idea. How does this sit alongside some of the AWS products we saw on that list? I'm guessing it sits separately. I mean, when do you use Party Rock versus something else?
Party Rock is just separate. It's just a web application that you can just create based on certain prompts that you put into the model.
So after I create this, does can I when I create this when I generate an app using some of this, I can then download the code that it generates and then make it a repo of its own.
Yeah, I don't think you can generate. You can download the code. I don't think you can do that.
Okay, we can play with this. There's already another thing that you've
That's
shown
already
me.
a
It's like
code.
it seems
Yeah,
looks like
but
eye candy here. It looks
I
pretty
just
cool
used
actually.
that as a, and I felt very interesting because it's just like, you have like a web application, like what, 10, 15 minutes. You just feed in the prompts, and then it will also create an image for you. So
Okay, you
this,
know what? That's why I'm going to have to convince you do a 1 day session. Probably convince you just all that I can buy is just lunch for Ramya, and then we can go through a number of these things because it's going to take that time. Because I want to understand. I just don't want to jump to doing something till I got a high level understanding and overview of this, which is awesome. So back to this, we have like another 14 minutes before you have to pop out, and then maybe you can join back if you want, if you can from the car as well. Is okay. The first thing I need is someone needs to do when they go to Bedrock, Ramya, is picking a model the first action item, or is there something else we can or should do before we worry about the model selection?
the first thing we have to do is, finding the model. So you're in the model catalog, and
So
you've
this
got
is this the first, so that was my question. So is this the very first thing that
this
you
is the first,
typically do?
yes, this is the first place where
Okay,
you,
you have a problem in mind, and then you have a number of these models available, and now there is this challenge that almost everybody has, which is okay, how in the world am I going to find a model that makes sense? But two
Mhm.
parts to that problem, right? One is a model that solves my problem, and then the best model that solves my problem. And the third part of that puzzle is the most affordable model that solves the problem in the best way possible. So
Yes,
I
yes.
broke that into three parts. The first part's probably the easiest, which is the model that actually can solve my problem. So in our case, you said, okay, I want to generate a diagram out of a repository. How do I? That's my problem domain. Somebody told me to do it. I have to get started. How do I start here? Before I pick and choose or filter these models, how
Mhm.
can I search within AWS Bedrock and the model to say, you know what, give me the model that makes the most sense for my problem?
So for the research, I had to do extra, like, Google, ChatGPT, different kind of,
Oh, hang on. So Bedrock does not have a place for me to type into a prompt that gives me the model that I'm looking for from this catalog.
yeah. So you can use a chat. If you go to the playground chat, there is a chat, right? And playgrounds, you see on the
Here,
map.
this one
Yeah.
here. Okay.
And there you can select a model, and you can also, say for example, Anthropic. Let's take Anthropic. So there you can, yeah. Do you have
Okay.
any models, or you can pick?
Yep.
So there, so what I would do is, I just put a use case here. So this is my use case. So what would suggest a best model for this use case in Anthropic? So it's gonna suggest that if this is the use case. So I'm like I have code, and then I'm gonna pull it from different repos and gonna convert into architectural diagram.
Rami, tell me what should it be? This actually goes one step further, but it's
Mhm.
all right. See, here I've made a selection.
Yeah.
I've already picked a model, so it didn't let me actually, it didn't suggest the best model to me. But from what you're telling me, it sounds like that is not something you can do within the console of Bedrock. You have to do that research outside of this, is what I
A
take.
little bit research outside using Google, ChatGPT, and I'd also searched in Hugging Face as well, because there are different models in Hugging Face, and it also you Hugging Face also offers a very good integration with Bedrock and SageMaker. Uh,
Okay.
but I would search there as well. So I would just see, okay, so in Hugging Face, which model is
Because you
best?
have to, not as well, but I'm saying you have to because AWS does not support a search here to
Yeah,
help
yeah.
me find the model I'm looking for.
Yes, but there is a good one that AWS offers. It's something called a model comparison that you can do. Let me. Can you click on cancel, and I can show you
Okay.
what. Um,
Actually, you know what? Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm curious here. What
mhm.
should, let's type something to have it generate, right? Whatever. What is a decent system prompt for what we're trying to achieve here?
So write a prompt and choose run to generate a response. Or you can say like, okay, give me a sample. API, or give me example
But not the
API.
prompt, right? First, I have to enter something into the system prompt, I reckon.
You can write in the prompt itself.
Okay,
Uh,
without providing any I thought the system prompt would provide context to our high level problem, so to speak. No, we don't need a system
you
prompt.
don't need it actually, so I'll just use this one. So
Okay,
you say, okay, give me a example API of a model um, that
okay.
converts.
Should I say what are we looking for?
We are looking for API of a specific model. So provide an example API
Or
of.
should I just say? Let me say it the dumbest way I would say it. Right? Want to convert? Want to generate an architecture diagram from a code repository. I mean, does that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, or yeah, suggest a model for this use case, something like
Uh,
that.
um, can you suggest an appropriate model for this use?
Yeah, so let's see what it comes up. So static code analysis, C4 model tools, language, PyCharm, implementation. Okay, diagram
Maybe.
generation, convert the into visual representation. Yeah, would you like more detailed information about any specific tool or okay? So it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't say the model, right? So yeah, so the way, yeah, it just requires some Google, Hugging Face, search in Hugging Face, ChatGPT to see. But this one does not. This is basically providing you an entire, what if you use this model because you actually you selected the model, right?
So
The
Ramya, sorry, tell me right, what we did here, it sounds like to
model.
me like if I had put the same question in Chat GPT, right? It would have given me an answer. This is the answer generated by this particular model, correct? There is no other difference. It didn't do anything specifically. Rather than me go to chatgpt.com and plug in this question and using the OpenAI LLMs, this was using the cloud, how you
Right.
pronounce that,
Because you
LLM essentially.
selected the specific model here, it's like giving you an answer that okay, for this use case, this is the tons of steps that you would do if you use this model, basically. So if you use this model to convert a code base to a diagram, so these are the different steps that you would take.
Correct.
Uh,
So this is basically if in other words, if I took the exact same question for what it's worth, and if I go to say, let me go back here to chat playground, keeping an eye on, okay. I select a model. Let's say I select I don't know, a deep seek model, right? I don't have access. Do I have access to, maybe I have access to an Amazon model?
I think you have
No.
Mistral AI access. No. Okay.
I don't access, where is the list of models that I do have access to? These were two within Anthropic, but I thought there were more model providers. I'm not sure why. Okay, let's see. I don't know how
Yeah.
instantaneous this is.
And I
Okay,
can
now
share
I
my
can this
screen.
no, but this is also an exercise, right? Just for people to know. So
Right.
let's say, oh, I do have access to Titan text. I don't know why I didn't pull that one up. Um, or maybe it's, you know what I mean? I do have access here, right? This one says access granted.
Yeah, I don't think you have access, Krish, because it's all grayed out, right?
No, no,
So
it's not. See this one here. This one says access granted.
where is it?
Oh, you wait. Hang on. Let me make sure I'm actually sharing.
So what I see is request access. There are models without access.
Oh wait, hang on. Which screen am I sharing? Oh no, I think oh maybe it's not refreshing. Tell me if I scroll, if I
Because
go
I
to
think you have access to Anthropic Cloud. So to select Anthropic and then
no, my bad. I thought I was sharing the entire window. Give me a second. It looks like it was only sharing. Oh, you know what? My apologies. All along I've probably been switching between tabs. I think I picked the share. Okay, so my bad. You can see it now, right? You see
yeah,
Titan Text G1 Lite access
yeah.
granted.
Yes, you do
So
have.
I do have access to that one. So if I go
Mhm,
back here, I was
mhm.
expecting to actually see that, but I don't. What's it called? Titan Text G1 Lite.
Okay.
And this doesn't even show Titan
So
Text
just could you put it in search bar and see if it comes up? It's the
Titan.
light, right? Okay, so here model without access. Which only shows a G1 Express. It doesn't show the
Oh,
one.
so maybe in this playground it doesn't have the other one, right? Maybe that's probably what it is. Okay.
Yeah,
And let's see, even if somebody wanted, okay, which one did it actually have? Let's go there.
the
It was
answer,
like what?
the Claude one.
No, let's say if I pick Titan, it's what was that? Titan Text G1 Express. Titan
Mhm.
Text G1's available to request. First of all, Rami, this is a silly question, but what is the deal with requesting access? I mean, why do they expect you to request access before it's granted? Do you know what the logic? I mean, what the
Yeah,
rationale there is?
even I was like, yeah, because it's most of them are actually free. Like it comes in the free tier, but it takes a second to get
Oh no,
the.
I can. This one is. I think some of them took a while. Okay, this one
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like it's
The moment
instantaneous.
you
So
request access, it takes just like 1 minute to get the access.
okay, it still doesn't. Maybe I should refresh the page. Maybe it didn't pick it up. So let's see if that solves the
So
problem. Yep,
yeah.
now it picks up. So all I had to do was I request access and then refresh this page for it
Mhm.
to
But
actually
is it the
recognize.
same model? I thought you had light. Did you have the Express or the light?
I had light, but it didn't pull that one up. So I requested access for the other one that this actually showed in this drop
Mhm.
down.
I think light could be something that is like it doesn't have all the features, maybe like the chat
Okay, so
features.
now we went to this other one.
Mhm.
One of my initial challenges is, each model surely is different in its metadata as well. How like how do we understand this? Like say the previous one didn't have randomness and diversity, it didn't have length, it didn't have guardrails.
Mhm.
So what are some of these things? What do you
So one,
call the
oh,
configuration?
yeah, that is like temperature is basically like for example, you have the output, right? So what is the probability that you will find a specific word in the prompt output? So that is temperature. So that top P actually refers to the probability of
Okay.
a specific like anything. It could be word or it could be something, a bunch of words. So what is the probability of that specific word coming up in the output? So if you want like a less number of probability, you would decrease it. So you would decrease that's something that you could it's point 0.9, so you can decrease it to like point 0.1 or something.
Okay, so
um,
which means, long story short, each of these models could have a slightly different configuration, and you have to sort of go into the model to understand what this means to make it
Right,
pick the right
right.
set of values.
If you see there's a temperature, temperature means like if you want the model to give you the same answer for like different question, you don't want the model to be very creative, then you would go with a lesser temperature. Okay, so that's why it's 0 by
But the notion of temperature, is that generic to models and LLMs in general, or are some of these specific to a certain model?
it's LLMs in general. So all LLMs will have temperature, and you'll have the top P, top K, and everything. But temperature is actually related to hallucination. So the more the temperature, in this case it's 0, but if the temperature is more, it would result to the model
Okay,
hallucinating.
so the actual configuration, some of these params are generic across models, except that when we pick the other one, Bedrock didn't give us an option to tweak or play with these numbers, right? With this model, it is actually able to it's giving us more control over what those numbers can
Yeah, it's
potentially
basically,
be.
temperatures like, say, I'm giving you prompt input, but I want the model to be more creative with output. So in that case, you would increase the temperature. So these are just the properties that, you want the model to customize.
And
So
okay, no, I think okay, that makes sense. And then when I plugged in the exact same question, the
Mhm.
answer is quite different, right? This model's response is very, very different from that model's response, for instance.
Yes, yes. So there is something called compare mode. If you see that, there is a toggle switch on the left, on the top left. So if you the compare mode, do you see compare mode over
Yep.
there? Compare, yeah. So here you can compare different models. So you first say, for example, based on your research, you think that okay, Titan could also serve your use case, and Claude can also serve your use case. Now if you want to compare these two models and see how you can just use a prompt, and you can just prompt these two models and see how it's responding to the same prompt. So you would see like that would be a different answer, the length of the answer would be different, and all that. So based on the response, you can figure out okay which model would fit your use case better.
Okay, I'm still a little bit lost here, but probably I know we have to wrap up in a minute, but I have to probably when we circle back, I can ask because let's say we ask these questions, but this is me maybe the question here was not the right way. The best way I could have asked this, because I said want to generate an architecture diagram from a code repository. Can you suggest an appropriate model? Probably that doesn't make sense because I'm in the context of a model already, right? So
Then the
perhaps that question doesn't make sense here. The question should perhaps be uh, whatever the next logical thing to do there is in the interest of generating. And I'm trying to understand what we want to accomplish by asking this, like forgetting what that prompt should have been. What would have been a good end result as an answer to that question here?
what would be the end result for the same for the
Yeah, like
different?
what, in other words, when I typed this and it generated this response, right? I'm just trying to think aloud here as to what response are we even expecting for it. What would be a good response that tells us what to do as step number two?
So if you see the, there'll be different response based on the different model. So I think you already asked the question, right? The model can be useful. I mean, if you see the Titan text, right, it doesn't give you most of the answers there. So it just gives you a bunch of the models is designed to generate architectural. It doesn't say what you need to do for your specific use case. Whereas the Claude 3.7 Sonnet, it basically tells you like, okay, these are the tools that you could use. These are solutions you could use, right?
Okay,
So
and
because
then basically, if we like one or the other, let's say we would pick cloud. How do you? I mean, maybe it's cloud or cloud. I mispronounce every possible English word, so I'm just going to say cloud. Is that cloud? I don't know. Maybe it's cloud. Okay, so let's say we pick that. So where we need to pick this up, Ramya, is once we basically said, okay, you know what? For whatever we are doing, we
Mhm.
for some reason want to go with even within that there are so many different ones, but let's say we pick one or the other, and then we can go through with the next step, right? Let's say I pick this one, and now as when we continue this conversation, we can say, okay, what do I need to do next to generate this, right? Let's say we go through the exact same use case with what you mentioned,
Right.
creating a diagram out of this repo. We could just take one of the Snowpal repos and try to do this exercise, right? And just see what steps are. Because so far, just to do a quick recap, what we've done here is we went and I asked you questions about which other product we could potentially use, and you mentioned a couple other products, Lex and Textract. Maybe they have their own embedded models, but if you wanted more fine, granular control over your models and the choice of LLM, then you go with something like Bedrock. You have a number of models. I mentioned the three ways you could, does it solve my problem? Does it do it? Is that the best model that can solve my problem? And is that the model that I can afford? Maybe there's a better one, but maybe I cannot afford that. So there's a pricing that comes into play as well. And we've made that much progress given the 50,000 questions I've thrown at you. Maybe when we pick this back up, it could be, we've picked a model, we have a use case, we know of a problem, we kind of have an idea as to what Bedrock is, and then I can continue to showcase my ignorance, and then we can pick and choose, whatever the logical next step is, right? I have a lot
Yes.
of sort of unanswered high level questions, but as a developer, this is what I recommend to people. Don't try to understand too much of something. It's just my 2 cents. If you have some hunch, you have some level of understanding, chug along, because sometimes you can become an expert in theory, but it's not going to be particularly useful. So it's, in my opinion, it's okay to be sloppy as long as you get something done at the end of the 3 hour window that you've blocked and allocated to yourself, right? And real quick, anything you want to summarize before you have to pop out?
Nothing much. So we have gone through all these, how the model can be selected for the specific use case and all that. So the next thing would be like getting the API from that model and integrate it with your application and deploy a model and inference. So that would be the next stage in Bedrock.
Perfect, right? Again, you have to, your daughter's probably waiting for you, but let's say if you're in the car, you feel like you want to continue, you're bored, you don't want to listen to music, just ping me and we'll just pick up from where we left off. And folks, again, before we end this, thanks a lot to Ramya Ganesh, who's a cybersecurity XDR leader. This is conversation number two. The first one we are talking technically, the other one was very exciting, just not technical. This is the first of our technical conversations, and I know we had to sort of schedule this. I'm glad it happened. Well begun is half done. I feel like I can pretend to be less ignorant about Bedrock. After 45 minutes of picking Ramya's brain here. Thank you so much, Ramya. Until next time, folks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.